Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We're excited today to welcome our panelists to this webinar today. No response not found. We don't want that to happen. How multi-location brands manage reviews to stay visible in AI search. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm Marcy Klein-Sasser, the VP of Marketing from Voxy, and I'm joined by two fantastic marketers. I'll let them tell you about themselves in just a minute here. We have Megan and Mariana, and then we have Alex here from Promo Republic. So let's just jump in. Megan, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about yourself and why this topic is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, so thanks for having me today. I'm with Sandler, so we work with businesses on their sales development, their business growth, sales leadership, sales management. So we've got just over 230 franchises worldwide across almost every continent. And this has become a really relevant topic for us lately, both for just general reputation management, but also with the rise of AI engines and making sure we've got visibility. So this is a conversation we're having with our franchisees on a regular basis. So I'm really excited to be talking about it with you guys today.
That's awesome, Megan. Thanks so much. Mariana, tell us about yourself and why this topic is important to you and your business.
Yes, so I come from franchising and the food service business, and I started at a small company. I don't want to say small because it's the biggest franchisor in Canada, but it's for smaller brands. It was very siloed, and that company had a very AI approach to it. Then I moved to another company that had a very manual approach to it, and it has been a long journey for sure, and just learning how to handle, especially in the food service business where the reply has to be immediate because that's what the customer expects. So it's very, very close to me, and I have lots of stuff to say, I guess.
I love it. Well, I'm glad that you have lots of stuff to say because that's what we're here to do. We're here to have a great roundtable chat. So thanks for being here, Mariana, and great to have you. All right, so let's kick it off. And I'm going to turn it over to Alex to tell us a little bit about our host of this webinar, Promo Republic.
RC, thank you so much. And a few quick thoughts, just a minute of everybody's attention. For those seeing me for the first time, I'm Alex, local marketing consultant with Promo Republic. What most brands actually don't realize today is AI agents really look a lot further beyond just your average star rating. It looks absolutely into your response rate, the recency, what is the context of those reviews? What is the customer relaying? How is the brand engaging back? What is the consistency that new reviews are coming in? And how that actually deviates on a per location basis for those managing franchise or multi-location business organizations. So what we're seeing is when reviews honestly go unresponded, it's not just a reputation problem, it ultimately becomes also a local ranking problem. And now in the era of AI search, a share of voice problem. Your locations ultimately start disappearing when customers that have high intent and they ultimately go to other local competitors. And when you look at it at scale across a multi-location or a franchise organization, really the challenge becomes ownership. Home office shouldn't be eating up marketing team's bandwidth to respond to each and every single review. And franchisees, office managers are often ultimately busy. They're running the business, they're servicing the customers. Reviews ultimately sit there day by day. Customers do not get heard, get a response back. And this is the gap that Promo Republic specifically closes. AI agents that collect and respond to all of your brand, consistent to your on brand, while maintaining that franchisee's local flair across every single location, every single day. Nobody no longer has to remember to do it. No more templates, no more copy and pasting. Dashboards become a thing of the past. Pure autonomous execution with brand guardrails that really foster and own your brand voice. If your brand is encountering any sorts of gaps in the reputation journey, and some brands do, the recovery is substantially faster than you think. Low lift, high impact. Um, if you're curious to talk, bounce some ideas, I'll be sharing my contact details in the chat shortly. Back to you, Marcy, and let's get kickstarted.
Yeah, let's get started. Alex, thanks for sharing that. And when you were going over some of like the problems and certainly all of the things that Promo Republic can solve for, it does get a little overwhelming. So we're going to have a great chat today. So thanks for that, Alex. Here's our agenda. We're going to go through some questions. Certainly, if you're not part of our CMO Peer Talks community, which I've been a part of for many years, certainly hit that QR code there on the left. But we have some questions we're going to go through. Some are on the screen here, but we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. And I think I'm going to top of the hour. Is that right, Alex? We're going till 2?
Yep.
So I
Yep.
can just keep an eye on time. So I'll have plenty of time. All right. So with that, put your answers in the chat. We want to kind of kick this off as an icebreaker. So, what's harder in your network? Getting customers to leave reviews or getting your team, presumably your franchisees, to respond to the ones they already have? Which is harder? So take a few minutes to put your answer in the chat and we'll see what we get. What's harder, getting your customers to leave reviews or getting your team to respond to the ones you already have? While we're getting our attendees to answer that, Megan, Mariana, any thoughts on in your systems specifically? What's harder for you? We'll go with you, Megan.
I think it depends on the franchise, to be honest. Like we have
Okay.
we're in B2B business, and a lot of our newer franchisees are just starting to get their feet underneath them and get some of the like baseline foundational marketing stuff going. And they don't have a ton of customers yet. So for them, it's, getting customers to leave reviews. For our more mature franchises, it's probably responding to the ones that are coming in because they are getting that regular cadence of reviews. It's just finding who's responsible or who's making the time to go in and to respond to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So stage of business is certainly key
Absolutely.
in which one might be a challenge. Mariana, what would you say for your business?
For us, is 100% in getting customers to do it. In Canada, the population is aging, and with Google being a bit of a barrier, you need to log into your account in order to leave a review. I find that's where the friction arises. So for us, the answer is very clear.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what the audience says. Alex, with all of the clients that you consult with and offer your expert advice, do you see this answer kind of clearly leaning one way or another?
I'd say specifically from a franchise lens, I think it's finding that sweet balance and what support that given franchisee needs on a given month, right? The dynamics heavily can look completely different depending where they sit geographically and what
Mhm.
stage of they are within their business. So some franchisees might really need to pick up the velocity of incoming reviews and kind of break the
Mhm.
habits
Yeah.
on where can technology help, where can we put our operators that are interfacing directly with the customers right there at that sweet spot to kind of capture that because as a new business, each and every single review really, really matters. So it's that golden opportunity to capture as many. And then once you have that problem of too many at scale, then it comes what can we kind of offload? Where do we need to step in as a brand? And where do we kind of delegate that through standard chains and support processes for our customers?
Got it. Awesome. Love it. All right. Well, we'll come back to what the answers show. Kate will hopefully give us some information there, but let's move on to the next question then. All right. So, um, we're going to kick this off with Mariana. Do you treat review response rate only on a reputation metric or a visibility metric as well? And how do you make sure your team understands the difference? So, we're talking about measurement of reputation. So, tell me how you look at that in your business, Mariana, and how you educate your team on learning how they're measuring reputation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I first joined this dental business I am now, I left the food service industry and I work at Canadian Dental Services now. That was one of the first things I brought up. As I looked at the business as a whole, I made sure they knew that the reason why recency matters and the visibility matters is because the competition is also looking at those things. So I find that explaining that to my team had to be an exercise. It's like you need to see this for yourself in order for you to believe it. And I find that that is the best way just working with our competitors, making sure we're looking at their ranking, what are they doing differently. The reviews is the first thing that pops up. It's not only the 4.9 stars, it's also the 4.9 stars with 878 reviews. So I think that exercise is crucial in order to get everyone on board.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And I think this balance of a reputation metric versus visibility is an interesting one to consider because, especially as Alex was pointing out earlier, because the LLMs are pulling in this information as a priority, they work so they're intertwined, right? So it's a really good point, Mariana. Thank you. Megan, tell us a little bit about how you look at a reputation metric or a visibility metric, or do you differentiate them and how you educate your team on this?
I agree with you. I think they're sort of inextricably linked, especially like you said, with this, this movement into search engines and AI engines using reputation signals really to determine credibility and visibility. So, we've got 230 franchises, and they're all sort of small, medium businesses. And like I mentioned, there's a variety of business maturity and business models that they operate on, but I need all of them to understand that regardless of the size of their operation, that piece of it has to be a priority because it not only gives them the sort of opportunity to prove that they're a business that cares about their client experience and takes the time to respond to that feedback. On top of that, those responses are so crucial for staying competitive in those search engines and those LLMs where their prospects are spending time doing research. So it's not just about making sure that we're keeping our current clients happy because a lot of our clients stay with us for a long time, but also making sure that we're having that visibility for our potential new clients.
Yeah, and I'll just also ask both of you to explain a little bit on the education piece. So specifically when this talks about your team understanding this, how do you use or what do you use from a training perspective for your franchisees so that they understand the value of reputation as a metric in their business? Is there something that you do within your business so that you make sure that's a training piece, whether that's as you onboard them or at throughout the kind of maturity of their business? What do you do to make this an important kind of KPI for their business?
I can go. Back on my Barbados days when I was dealing with franchisees, is definitely an educational portion that they have to see for themselves. So what I would do is during our onboarding calls, I would show them a heat map of what their location looked like and how the competitors were ranking within that new opening. And they knew what the target review was per year in order to find what the next competitor had in terms of reviews. They also knew for a fact that they had to rank higher than them for that first year. So if they were willing to allocate a budget in order to help us dig into more local SEO and optimize their page during that time, as well as combining that with a budget for paid ads, we would usually start off with both combinations. So not only we optimize the FAQs in order to make sure that that one location page was localized. Oh, do you have accessible parking? Do you have an accessible entrance? So we wanted to make sure we had everything set up before they even opened the store. But we also made sure they knew what the target for visibility was and who were they competing against. That way, you have very clear understanding of, oh, if my staff needs to be trained to ask for reviews, that's my priority number one. Then I will do that as is as important as knowing how to wrap the burrito.
Right, that makes total sense. All right, let's move on to our next question. So, where does review response break down at scale? You mentioned, Megan, you have 230 franchisees. How would it break down in your system and who owns fixing it?
Mhm. So I'm in a position where I do my best to influence franchisees to implement the best practices that we provide. So, we have an intranet system where, we provide training and I do a monthly webinar on specific marketing topics. We actually covered this in particular in February. So ultimately, we give them all the resources, we give them guidance, we make sure we're staying on top of the most recent algorithms and shifting marketplace influences, but it eventually falls on them to execute. So, some franchisees have a dedicated marketing contractor or a staff member, but many of them are solopreneurs and have varying levels of abilities and experience with their marketing tech stack. So, as their marketing enablement partner, the education piece is really important. The resources are important, but also just making sure I'm available. So I have office hours where people can drop in, and we're constantly encouraging them to, come have a conversation. If you're not doing it, how can we help you implement it? If you are trying to do it, but it's not going well, how can we help you improve? But ultimately, it falls on them to fix it if their review response is sort of down.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Mariana, what about you?
It's funny to hear Megan explain her business model because when dealing with food service and direct to consumer is completely different. We back on my old days at Barburrito and at MTY, it was very controlled. We had automations and we had personalized automations and we had AI powering that whole interaction. We did have a threshold, so if the reviews were on the lower side, that was not auto replied and that was escalated. And if the reviews were three and up, then that got an auto reply. And I find that that specific approach for food service really works because you get so many reviews on especially different platforms. If you're looking at DoorDash reviews, Uber Eats reviews, if you don't automate them, you will never get through them. And you want to make sure everybody feels important. So if they're giving the time of day and writing feedback, you want to make sure you reply.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mariana, how many locations do you currently have in your business?
So right now I work in dental. We have 32 locations.
Okay.
Prior to that, I was a barista, was 400 locations. And then at my job at MTY, I believe combined the three brands I worked for, they had about 100.
Awesome. Okay, great. Just for perspective for
Yeah,
our
yeah, of
listeners, that's
course.
super helpful. One other question in terms of the breaking down at scale. Is there one in particular challenge that either of you have faced, either that the franchisees have brought forward or that you've found in your experience with review generation that has been in particularly challenging? That maybe that you found a solution for that could potentially help the audience. Anything come
We
to mind?
I'm not sure. I know other businesses have gone through it because I went directly to some Reddit boards to see if it was just us or if it was everybody. But in January and February, we had a lot of franchisees who all of a sudden had like 20, 30, 40 reviews disappear, sort of being sort of noted as maybe spam or that kind of thing. And we kind of struggled to navigate those AI spam filters that were coming into specifically the Google business reviews because that's where most of our focus is with our
Sure.
franchises. And I think what we kind of uncovered was that when they had like a large spike of reviews coming in at the same time, it tended to be triggering something. So we're really trying to just focus on consistency and being more strategic about asking segmented groups for reviews over time rather than, trying to get as many as possible at once because that seemed to be sort of putting some chinks in the armor for some of our locations.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure that was a good learning takeaway for the audience. I do recall that that time when I was getting a lot of messages from my marketing friends about reviews disappearing. So I think that was a really good piece of advice, Megan, in terms of targeting a select group, an audience segment, if you will, with consistency there. So thanks for sharing that. Mariana, what would you say is maybe a potential
I
challenge
have
that
a
you
really hot
overcame?
take. I have a
Okay.
really hot take.
I love hot takes.
So on Google, you can actually go back and edit your review. And AI, many AI softwares do not account for edits. So they believe it's been reply already. So what happens is the reply says, "We're so sorry to hear." Meanwhile, the new edited version says, "It was a great experience. It was a great comeback. Thanks so much for the gift card." And the AI hasn't been able to adapt to that reply that has been given, like, and edit it after. So I feel like that's a gap there. I don't know, Alex, who do we talk to? But uh, we got to do some stuff. I feel like it's a little problematic, and I mean, back on my Barbados days and MTYs, they both had the exact same problem, and they did not use Promo Republic.
Okay, well, that could be a hot take right there too. I will say to our listeners and audience today, if you have any hot takes, just because we have the fantastic Mariana and Megan here with us, and of course Alex as well, put your hot takes in the chat because we can all learn from each other. So, love a good hot take. Thank you, Mariana. All right, let's head to the next topic. All right, let's talk about what does it take to make review response run like infrastructure instead of a task. I know this is a big one. I've been there. It's been a challenge. Megan, we'll start with you. Review response. How are you handling it so it's not a task?
I think for our franchise owners, because they are very busy, they're running a business, and for a lot of them, if they don't have a dedicated marketing person, these are the kinds of things that aren't prioritized or they feel like they don't have time for. So, really helping them understand that it's a tactic that's part of a larger strategy and that can really be impactful for their business. We hear about like, oh, I'm not getting enough leads, or I don't feel like I have enough presence in the marketplace. This is one of those things that I think can really move the needle for them without having to spend an inordinate amount of money on it. So having a documented process, just so they have a visual of the impact that review responses sort of have in the bigger picture, and just something that's easy to point to and say, you know, here's a process that you can implement. Here are some resources to help you do it, and thinking about what the outcomes are if you're going to put effort into something, and just helping them understand that it's going to push their business forward, and it's not just sort of like a fluffy marketing activity.
Yes, no fluffy marketing activities here. Mariana, what would you add to helping to
Absolutely.
make review response more infrastructure and systematic versus a task?
I agree with everything Megan said. I feel like the educational piece is really what differentiates making it a task and making it part of the business, and like moving the needle in dollars wise. It's great that operations cares about reviews, but that took years of explanation of people like Megan and I sitting here in these webinars and making sure that everyone was kind of on the same boat. But I find that with the programs that we have right now, especially with AI being able to help, it has taken the burden away of what do I write. So Canada is a very mixed culture country with a lot of new immigrants. If that person that is responsible for that task is not as confident, that is not a burden on them anymore. They can just go in there. If you have a platform, in our case, we do, and we did, and that it just makes it so much easier. Not only for you to take the sentiment away, but responding in a way that has a respectful manner, and even without that like cultural difference, it kind of takes that away. It makes it easier, makes it faster, but it also adjusts the tone. Sometimes you're the business owner, you don't want to hear that, your food sucks, and like you want to reply on a bad kind of like, I worked so hard 24 hours marinating that chicken. So like you want to make sure that um that is a tool that helps you execute to your benefit and get the word out there the way you want to be perceived. So I find that in our world, especially in marketing, has become such a pillar. Like reputation management is a pillar, but getting the franchisee to understand that for them, that is not only revenue generating, but also helps others find their business is it has taken like it definitely has a long time coming. Like we've been teaching this for years and years, and with AI, it's very easy to get them on board now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know early on in the early days of review responses and just reputation management, as you said, as a pillar for franchise businesses, there weren't a lot of these tools many years ago, and franchisees struggled. But I think now franchisees understand that they have these tools that make it simple, and it becomes kind of part of their day, or at least part of their kind of normal course of business. So I think that both the thing, everything that you ladies have shared is certainly shared, all of the things that make it just kind of normal course of business. So yeah, I would agree with that. Alex, is there something that you would want to share that you've seen your clients do to help on the infrastructure side of things? Because I know there are franchise brands that sometimes struggle with making it so I won't say stringent. They want to help the franchisees still feel like they're making it their own, but putting bumpers around it, but still keeping brand standards, but letting franchisees still localize. So anything that you would kind of share along those lines with your what you've seen your clients do well?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I want to highlight like depending on where everybody's brand is within the journey. Some might be with a marketing team of one, some might be managing 200 locations, 10 brands, and thousands of locations. So for those that are a little bit earlier into the journey that are still refining, there's three kind of key keywords that stand out to me on this questions, which is review, infrastructure, and tasks. When I think of the actual infrastructure, it's important to have the preliminary foundation in place, and that is very clean data ownership at the home office, where it's no reliance of a franchisee submitting the data or any sort of manual checks that we do systematically every 6 months. Clean data ownership that in real time collects all of the vital metrics to what you define as a healthy reputation management strategy, whether that's velocity or reviews, response rate, what is the sentiment that's actually laying within those custom reviews, what are the strong talking points that we can market about, where do we have area to further refine the experience that our franchisees and storefronts deliver to our customers and our local communities. So A, having that foundation allows you to really effectively build out training because you understand where each and every one of those franchisee sets, and it allows you to clearly kind of assign the tasks that are then needed by having that source of data. So I'd say from an infrastructure standpoint, just ensure that you have clean, reliable data at the home office first.
Love it. Yes, that's so important in any kind of pillar of marketing that we want to have clean data so that the marketers and the entire brand team can make data-driven decisions. So that's really important. Thanks for sharing that, Alex. All
Absolutely.
right.
And then to the second question, in terms of kind of what's that sweet spot between home office and where that local franchisee can further build upon it, I think it's a tough question because I think it really comes down to the industry. So
Mhm.
Mariana could probably relate kind of working in two different facets of worlds between quick service and also medical. In the medical space, there's probably more regulations to how that review needs to be addressed or how we can attract new customer reviews as opposed to, let's say, how do we process a three-star review that says, the food was great, but it arrived cold because Uber Eats took a while. It's a little bit of different delegation processes that I think have to take place. So it's going to be very subjective to the industry, but absolutely, when you put too many restrictions onto the franchisee from getting involved, that's what ultimately hurts that adoption.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. And even in one of our prior questions on, the visibility versus the number, right? And you talked about it. The yeah. So we'll leave that in our last question, but just in terms of like the visibility and the reputation piece, that's really important that where the franchisee comes in. So well, thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. All right, let's head to our next topic. So, what separates AI generated responses that build trust from ones that damage it? Oh, this is we're getting into that AI trigger right there. I love it. All right. Mariana, let's start with you. What do you think separates AI generated responses that build trust from ones that damage it?
I think it is the sentiment. So, I can give you an example of my personal life. I got my nails done at a salon somewhere else. It wasn't my usual salon. And again, you can only leave one review for your really good salon that you go all the time. You can only leave one there. But that one that wasn't as great, I left a review. And it is a franchise business. I got a reply, and the reply was like, "Thank you so much for your visit. We'll see you next time." No, you won't see me next time. So like it was very I could tell how robotic it was, and I was already thrown off by the service. So imagine again like just a reassurance, hey, don't come again because we really don't care what you have to say. So I think that's where we kind of distinguish its use, right? I want to make sure that if the sentiment is not being read properly, that the AI has no capability of replying to that review. In the same sense, I would say that when a review is really great and mention things by name, you should probably take the time to mention that person by name too, or say, "Hey, yes, it was great seeing you and your daughter." You know what I mean? Like it's just makes it a little bit more personal. So I know nobody has all the time in the world to reply to all these reviews, but again, having the power to decide whether that is there is no comment there, there's no sentiment, but 5 stars. Okay, go ahead, reply with the AI. That person didn't take the time. But if they did take the time, wrote you a 3-line comment on what it was, mentioned by name, do not reply with the AI. Go in and actually reply. That's where I would draw the line.
Yeah, I that's 1000% the case. If someone is using names or if they are taking time out of their day to be very specific and you clearly see a generic 1000% AI generated response, it's almost worse, in my opinion, than not responding at all. And that's my opinion. To your point, using your nail salon example, did it make you feel good that you got a response that was so generic?
No,
I
the worst part is
mean,
I clicked on it because you got the notification and saying that business replied to your email to your review, and I'm like, "Ugh, I want to see what they
so
say
did it kind of piss you off? Yeah.
more."
So now it's almost like you wanted to talk poorly about that brand. And
Edit
if
and
they,
go.
yeah, so now you almost wanted to respond back like thank you, no thank you, or whatever might
Exactly.
come to mind. We won't mention it here. We'll be polite. However, that's where brands clearly have the ability to set up rules like you mentioned, no sentiment, no text in this box, send these optional AI generated responses. But if there is a clear response, specifically a name, respond back saying it was so nice to see you, Mariana, and your daughter, or what have you. So those are some
Mhm.
great examples. Megan, what are your thoughts about AI generated responses versus ones that could damage a
Yeah,
brand?
I think our franchisees, so we're in a position right now where the franchisees are handling their own review responses, and I think they're probably not at the place where there's enough volume to sort of merit an AI tool that automatically responds. So for them, I think using an AI tool here sort of has the same approach when using it in other area of marketing where it's just
Mhm.
that it's a tool. So it can support like ideation and editing, but it's not replacing that like human element that's required when responding to a review. So making sure that, like you guys were talking about, there's personalization, making sure it's not generic, especially if they're mentioning something specific. They're including, context and empathy, especially for negative reviews that requiring maybe like directing the reviewer to a private channel to address specific issue or to solve a problem. So we have a lot of visibility with our clients, right? Like, so they're not sort of like a large amount of faceless people who come in and out of like a brick and mortar place. our trainers work with people and business owners and leaders very closely. So when someone leaves a review, we typically know exactly who that person is. So we want to make sure that we're responding to them personally because we have a personal relationship with them. And that if we are using AI to draft or edit, that there's some element of human review to edit, approve responses, particularly for negative feedback.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. You talked about volume. I mean, there is a decision a brand needs to make at some point where if it's a volume question, there's just so many reviews coming in with responses. I mean, that's a good, I would think, challenge to have. However, you do just need to be so careful with these AI generated responses. You can
Mhm.
use AI tools, as you're mentioning, Megan, and I think that's fantastic, but there needs to be some discussion and training and brand standards around that. But pure AI generated responses, which still could have brand standards around them,
Mhm.
again, just business rules, I think, are key here. You have
Yeah,
to set up
absolutely.
your brand standard and business rules around that. So that's awesome. All right,
I
let's
think,
go.
oh,
Oh, I'm
sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that we need to make sure our franchisees have a strategy around the reputation management piece and reviews, just like we have an ad strategy or a content strategy. And I think
Absolutely.
sometimes when owners come into the business, that's not a piece that they've thought about, just because it's not always top of mind. Like they know they have to have content, they know they want to run ad campaigns, but reputation management isn't something that is automatically sort of in their business plan. So there's again, there's that education piece around why that's so important.
Absolutely. And it will vary by business type, as Alex,
Mhm.
you mentioned earlier. Obviously, Megan, you have a very specific and relational business. Like you said, you know your clients, and most likely, if they're writing a review, you know them. A QSR business is going to be very different than potentially a carpet cleaning business, or even then, it just really depends on the business. So, all right. All right, let's move on to the next question. I don't want to run out of time for the audience to be able to ask you, lovely ladies, and marketing experts some questions. So, all right, for brands that have been inconsistent with their review velocity, what does a realistic recovery look like? So you're not building that review generation reputation management program fast enough. What do you do? Mariana, what do you do?
You know, I kind of struggled answering that question because when I was taking the a little on my side notes earlier, I was thinking, for me as a customer, what makes sense, right? Because it's great for me as a business. I could tell you what makes sense for my team. They're not gonna get back to you because I gave them 20 other tasks, right? So the idea is if it's not automated, it does not have any type of rules, but you need to get somebody on it. I think the rule of thumb for me would be 48 hours. That getting into that set, like getting to that person within that time frame is reasonable. I would say there is a bit of a industry perspective here too, because the value of a food order is not as complex as the value of dental treatment or an orthodontic treatment that you may have spent $7,000 on or 10 grand on. God knows how much orthodontics cost these days. So I find that there is also a measure there because if I took the time to write a review, whether that's bad or good, depending on the value of the service, there should be a consideration within that 48 hours. Whether you reply and press send right away, it doesn't it doesn't reflect on the business, but you should be looking at it because I find that that time frame might take you a couple approvals to be like, can I reply this way? Would I be okay doing this if you're doing it manually? But I find that that intake should be within 48 hours to be able to recover that customer, I would say, if it's in like a bad situation. But if you already have a consistent plan in which you are doing the reviews once per week and you have that in a manageable scale, I think that's okay too. As like the nail salon example, they replied to me within, I think, 24 hours, and it wasn't a great reply. So there's that to measure as well.
Yeah, for sure. Megan, what's your thought on velocity? And if you didn't have a consistent plan, how do you recover that?
So I think for us, especially with newer franchisees that we're onboarding and training, for us, it's sort of slow and steady wins the race. So sort of building that muscle and having it become a habit and something that they just do naturally in their sort of daily or weekly tasks. And then again, it just becomes second nature for them to take care of it because we have internally, we built out marketing playbooks for our franchisees that sort of speak to where they are in their business and sort of what stage of growth they're in. And right from the get-go, this piece of it is recommended to everybody, no matter how mature their franchise is or sort of where they are with income. And it's because there's such a great opportunity with those reviews to then amplify it into, testimonials in our marketing content. Or if we get a great review, to approach someone and say, hey, can we do a case study? It seems like this really worked for you. Like, is this something that we can expand on? So there's so many opportunities with those reviews, not only for visibility and credibility online and in AI engines and search engines, but to expand into your broader content marketing strategy. So for us, it's paramount. And so making sure that they're not intimidated by it or feel overwhelmed by it, but just giving them that sort of regular cadence where they can expand it when they've got more resources, but at least building that sort of baseline muscle of making sure that they've got consistent reviews coming in and consistency in responding to them, I think is so crucial for their business model.
That's great. Yeah. I would say just from my experience working with a variety of brands, sometimes franchisees will just get distracted in their business, right? And so this pillar, as we've defined reputation management, sometimes just, they take their eye out of the ball. I love what you said, kind of, yeah, yeah, you have to be consistent and that will certainly win the race. But franchisees just many times, if this is part of their it's in the expectation for, let's just call it local marketing. Sometimes they just move on to other things or they have other emergencies, if you will, in their business. So sometimes it's just a matter of just putting this back on their priority list within that marketing messaging and training. And to your point, I love that you have the playbooks, Megan, to just kind of point to this is part of your playbook and you need to implement it accordingly. So that's for the most part, it's a communication piece that kind of brings you back to that recovery if it does fall off in your consistent plan, right? All right, let's go to our next question. I believe it's our last. Oh, we're at Q&A. That was our last. All right. Well, good timing. I was hoping at the 45 hour at the maximum we would get to questions. So, Kate, I guess I'll turn it to you on our audience for Q&A and what we have what's on anyone's burning question list for our fantastic panel. I don't know if anyone wants to come off mute, if we have that option. If not, we'll see what's in the chat. Seeing if I don't know if I have control on that, Kate.
Yeah, Alex, maybe you could check the chat and the Q&A box.
Yeah, I'm looking through. I'm not seeing right now any questions.
All right. Well, if anyone has any questions that they'd like our fantastic panel to answer, please let us know. I will throw one out to Mariana and Megan just kind of to wrap it up. So if there's one kind of area of or one recommendation you might have for anyone who may be struggling either to launch a reputation management program or they're in it and they're just struggling with their franchisees who are pushing back and saying like either I don't have time for this or I'm not sure how I fit this in my day. What's something that you can share with them to help them kind of push it forward, either get it off the ground or push it forward? What would you recommend to someone who may be struggling to stand up this pillar within their marketing?
Um,
Um,
you can
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead, Megan. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I'm really lucky that my whole job is making this as easy as possible for our franchisees. So what I make sure that I do is they have, so we use HubSpot across all of our franchisees. So I can push in email templates, I can push in landing pages, I can push in forms, I can push in custom properties to all of their HubSpot accounts to make it easy for them. We give them AI prompts or scripts. We give them essentially spoon feed them everything that they need so they can take the template, localize it, and deploy it without having to create anything or having to have any guesswork. So we've got lots of guides. Like I said, we've got sort of an internal system where they know where they can go and look for resources specifically about review management or getting reviews or anything connected to it. So just me being available to them through office hours and sort of those monthly education marketing webinars that we provide, and then also just having sort of a hub where they know exactly where to go to find everything they need to sort of execute and don't have to create anything themselves from scratch.
Fantastic. Mariana, what's one piece of advice you would have? And then I have one follow-up question, and then we'll see if there's any additional questions.
I would say, um, get them to think as a customer. I would always every time I hosted the Barburrito University Day for Marketing. So it was an entire day dedicated for marketing for new franchisees and existing franchisees that wanted to learn more about what was happening within the business. And I find that this exercise was something that we did during class. And it was so helpful because it made you understand that the same way you think of a restaurant, so they would come from all over Canada. They would sit in this one room, and I said, Google a restaurant in Ossington. Tell me which one you want to go to. Every single one of them, every single one of them would say the highest rated with the most recent reviews. Like that was always the case. Did not matter whether they were coming from BC or they were coming from Alberta. Everybody wrote down the exact same restaurant. This is an exercise that is not only pertinent to food, but when we are talking about dental care, when we're talking about um, cleaning service, I don't want to hire the worst of the worst, right? We want to hire the best of the best. So
Sure.
again, it's just a positioning piece, and it's so in front of you that you're getting that positioning place over and over. I'm in a situation right now where I don't even trust Google anymore. I'm going to ChatGPT being like, "Is that for real?" Like it's like you know what I mean? It's like it's just we have so much we have so many competitors within the same block that if I only have $20, I would rather spend in a really, really great taco place and a really, really great burrito place than spending in one that people already told me is not great. So that exercise really cleared up their minds, not only ask for reviews, but to also set a target for themselves because the same way we were able to do the exercise at Ossington, they were able to do that same exercise back in BC when they went back home. They would sit wherever their new restaurant was and be like, burritos near me. And try to figure out who were they actually competing against at that location. Sometimes the franchisees had done this exercise even prior to purchasing the store. And now that they were in the store, the competitors completely changed. So it's like it's a always revolving door, and I find that there's always something to be optimized. There's always a better way of asking for reviews. There's always a better way of replying to reviews. So if you just set and forget, it's never going to be good enough, right? So I find that that exercise is something that we replicated throughout the years and over again. The goal was always to be better, to get more recent reviews and to get a true picture of what my business looks like. Sometimes we would even use it as an audit measure. Like, oh, look at what these person said. Look how many people said that about your store. Maybe you should have start by addressing that, right? Like it's like very, very reasonable I would say, way of using reviews. And I would say giving that chance to have the franchisee look over it and just see what his own behavior is to identify others, it really clicked.
I love that. That's great. All right, I have one other quick question, and then we'll see. Alex, you can tell me if there's any other questions from our participants or our guests today. Do either of you use like a multi-channel approach for review requests? So tell me a little bit about the communication channels that you're currently using for review generation or review requests of your customers. Megan,
You
we'll
want to
start
go
with you.
ahead, Megan? Yeah.
Sure. So our franchisees do a couple of different things. So at the end of a lot of their workshops or training sessions, they'll have their QR code on a slide for the customers to leave reviews. A lot of them also run email campaigns. So like we said, they have segments built out with different ICPs and current and past clients that they'll sort of roll into to sort of timed out campaigns. Um, and we also encourage them to have one-on-one conversations with their, because again, we're very customer facing. Talk to them about leaving reviews, and we've got a list of sort of triggers that if we hear a customer talk about something, that's a great opportunity for us to say, hey, would you mind hopping onto our Google Business profile, leaving us a review, and just making it really easy for them to access it. So QR codes, maybe not as many social channels, just because of the nature of our business, but a lot of sort of automated email marketing campaigns.
And what about you, Mariana?
Same. I would say for us right now in this business that I'm in, which is dental services,
Hmm.
after each appointment, you get an email from us and says, "Did you love it? Did you had a great time with your doctor? Leave us a review." And again, the prompt really helps mitigate the friction, I would say. Like if that person was in a hurry and they just left, the insurance bills got paid, they didn't get the chance to speak with the front desk anymore, and they just wanted to get out of there, then that's how we hear from them. And sometimes for us, it's sent a couple hours after the appointment, and it has worked well. I find that for Barburrito was also an automated version of it, very similar. If you order online, you get a reply and like a request. I would say using the Uber Eats, DoorDash, Skip the Dishes version of those automations are also a huge deal. I would say like Uber is great at prompting. If you leave a review and then everything and making sure that you have set up your automated replies, it really makes a difference.
Yeah. And I'll just add, and this is my literally like 10-second shameless plug for Voxy. We are a text marketing platform built for franchises, and we have many of our clients that do exactly what you're saying, but they layer on text. It's very simple, and we have quite a few clients that have huge success from review response, um, layering on text. So just kind of a just a comment there. Alex, any other questions from our audience that we can go to next?
So yeah, we have a couple questions that came in. First
Great.
one, what is the strategy to educate franchise owners about the importance of reviews? So I shared my 2 cents, where it's ultimately identify the franchisees or locations that are doing it well and use them as the peer-to-peer case study, as opposed to doing this just another corporate initiative being forced down my back. Show them what
Yeah.
success looks like, have the data to back it, and then create the perspective you're just falling behind. So that's my 2 cents, but would love to kind of hear everybody else's perspective. And Marcy totally agree that text message is such a powerful tool. And when we think of review generation, where it's like, is email getting the same response that it used to in the past?
Yes. Thanks, Alex. Yeah. Appreciate that. So, Megan, Mariana, what's your thoughts on franchisee education and training?
My franchisees, their whole what they do is they help other businesses grow their business. So they're growth focused. So if I can tie anything back to revenue, if I can frame it for them that this is going to help, increase their top line revenue for the year, that is going to resonate with them. And also just, helping them see that, this is really in recent years, we've been able to really level the playing field with these kinds of tools. We don't need to have a massive ad budget anymore to be competitive. What we do need to do is focus on these kinds of things that we are very accessible to us and we can operationalize. And that's going to have a huge impact on our revenue for the year. So just trying to get them excited about it that way.
That's great. Mariana, anything you would add?
All of our Reader University ideas, I would say apply to Ricardo's ideas. So I think I kind of covered that one.
Good.
But I like the other question I see coming. So Alex is like itching. Go ahead.
All right, with 4 minutes left, let's close out with this last question.
Platform suggestions being used to automate Google reviews with the franchise owners.
All right, Mariana, you want to take it?
Yeah, I now use Promo Republic, so that is super exciting. I would say for us, we are kind of shifting from an old platform to a more sophisticated one. So we're in a very good stage of this business transition, and then we've done our education portion, and now we're just trying to make sure that whatever it's managed corporate, it's managed to its full extent. And yeah, with Barburrito, I'm not sure I can say, but I can tell you MTY. Back in my day there, we used DAC. It's a Canadian company. I'm sure Ricardo, if you're here, you can reach out to them. Pretty nice and friendly, but Promo Republic's friendlier.
Megan, any additional suggestions as well?
Yeah, no, so with Sandler, we've got part of our MarTech like tech stack. We have software that everybody is on. But when it comes to things like reputation management, each individual franchisee would sort of decide if they want to use a particular solution or platform. So there's certainly a variety that the network uses, but I will be making sure that they know about Promo Republic and that it's a great option for them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for your questions and your engagement in the webinar today. I was thrilled to be your moderator and co-host, if you will. Thank you so much, Mariana and Megan, Alex and Kate. Always great to have these CMO peer talks with the community, and hopefully we'll see you at our next event.
Thank you,
Have a great
everyone.
day,
Okay,
everyone.
everyone.
Great conversation.
Thanks.
Bye, thank you.